But good morning all, and thank you very much for showing up. The point of today's meeting is to give a Basics 101 type introduction to Parish Online. So we show what it can do, we can show you how it can be used, and then we actually go into a live session where I invite you to do the work if you'd like to, so that for anybody who hasn't had a go at it yet, it can seem a bit overwhelming to begin with, but once the basic principles are established, it's a piece of cake. So I apologize for those of you who are already pretty familiar with Parish Online. Perhaps you could just think of this as a sort of a reminder of what it can do. Let me just share my screen and I'll put up basically the first of many slides. So let's go into, it would be, it's always the way, isn't it? Let's come back out of there. We'll have to go that one. All right. So is everyone able to see the opening screen? I get nods from some people, so I'm assuming that everyone's okay. So the rules of today. There are a lot of slides here, and the point of that is to enable people to go through them later in slow time and for it to make sense to people who may not have been able to get to this presentation. So the first thing to point out to you is, first of all, that we are recording the session. And those of you who have elected not to be on video, that may be because of that, or there may be other reasons, maybe it's the bandwidth issue. But if you are prone to sirens whistling past or dogs barking, I'd be grateful if you could mute your microphones, please. I will be sending the entire presentation to everybody afterwards, so you don't need to take notes. It will all be coming to you. The video will be coming to you as well. And the first sort of large number of slides after the first couple are actually really there as reminders. So you'll find that we'll be whizzing through those. And then we'll slow down when we get to the interactive bit where I'm inviting you to do the work if you wish to. And when we get to that bit, it'll be a lot more relaxed. So what we're going to cover then is starting off just by making sure that you've all got the licenses that you need. These are free, so it's not anything other than a bureaucratic endeavor. Then we'll be running into Parish Online, what it can do and how it works. And I borrowed a few slides from Parish Online themselves there. So some of you may recognize these if you've been to some of their ALC type workshops. I apologize for that, but I'm trying to cater to all levels of familiarity with the product. We then explain to you what are the base maps and all the layers within Parish Online, how you can use them, how you can improve understanding through visualization. And then we get into the fun bit of actually doing it. And then a Q&A session at the end. And just to keep you all on your toes, it would be really helpful to me if people could say at the end of the session, what it is they'd like to see in future for training sessions. So I'll give you that now so you have 40 minutes to think about it. Because whenever I've asked people in the past, they said, oh yes, we'll come right back to you with answers. And then there's a long hushed silence. So I thought I'd start off by giving you a heads up this morning. So going on, the details in Parish Online are really, really detailed if you've got the public sector geospatial, again, the PSGA allowance. And to go with that, there's also the aerial photography Great Britain license, which again is entirely free. And I'm just going to show you how to apply for these. So when you get into Parish Online, hopefully you all see this. Let me just move the photographs because they're blocking some of my, there we go. If you go up to the cogwheel and click on the administration help and support that comes up after that, it'll take you to here. And for those of you who are familiar with Parish Online, this is all changed. It's a completely new support center. It's been running for about a couple of weeks, but it's only been accessible to everybody for the last couple of days. But if you type in PSGA, it brings up with the selection of menus underneath, and getting your PSGA number tells you everything that you need to do. And the number is announced to you pretty quickly. And then when you've got that, it'll automatically upload the latest high definition stuff to Parish Online, and you can do the same for the photographs. So I just mentioned those two in passing. So now I'm going to go whistling through a presentation, which again, I'm not expecting people to really absorb information. It's just a sort of a bunch of things that you can do with Parish Online so that you can work out the possibilities and what you wanted to do in your particular area. So it's designed specifically for councils. It's a cloud-based system, so the only thing you need is an internet connection and some sort of browser. You can use it on any sort of machine, from your smartphone on up through a tablet to a PC. But for today's exercises, I hope most people are on PCs. It doesn't matter whether they're Macs or Linuxes or Windows, but PCs are easier. Quite a friendly bunch of information available to you. So there's always a sort of monthly newsletters. There's the knowledge base, which we've just shown you briefly over the PSGA license. There's a user group on Facebook. There's a user group website, and both of those, if you click on them there, you can get into them. And then if you click on the training partner, it takes you to you know who. So why do we want to use maps? Well, things are much easier when they're visualized. So this is all what's known as location-based data. So if you have something here and you click on it, then all the data applicable to it pops up on the left-hand side of the screen. Really useful. And these are the sorts of things that people in councils use their Parish Online for, or digital mapping generally. It doesn't have to be Parish Online, but these are sort of classic things that you can use the system for very easily. It's a good idea to get your parish records out of the filing cabinet and onto online, because it's then available 24/7. It can be accessed from anywhere. And if the parish clerk has gone off on holiday and taken the key to the filing cabinet with her, it doesn't matter if you have all the data online. You need nothing extra. Everything you need is within Parish Online, with the one exception. If you start doing fancy things like neighborhood plans, they're going to need a word processing and more clever presentation things. But Parish Online is brilliant for producing all the maps that go into your neighborhood plan. So you can do everything yourself. You can print it all out on paper. You can print it out on a PDF file and send it electronically to people, and you can save records locally and far, far away. All sorts of information from all sorts of third parties coming into Parish Online. So you'll find that there are hundreds and hundreds of layers of data that you can use, and they all come from major institutions such as the ones on this picture. There's a fantastic page on the Parish Online website called Case Studies. There's a tab called Case Studies, which are wonderful at showing you how to do some of the things that you're looking to do. So I highly recommend that to you, and here are just some of the examples. So neighborhood planning we briefly covered, but here they are generating the maps for that. All sorts of things that you can present in terms of information. And again, once it's on the map and visual, it's much easier to understand for a councillor what on earth is being discussed at the next meeting. Those of you who insure your stuff, and I hope that's everybody, will find that it makes life much easier if it's all recorded online in a data system, and then producing reports for the insurance companies and convincing the insurance companies that you've done a good maintenance routine or whatever it is, much easier if it's all online. This is an example of an asset register, so showing the speed cameras and your dog waste bins and the phone booths and bus stops, all that sort of stuff. I think most of this is self-evident, but knowing where your salt bin's in is always helpful. And the cemeteries are really useful because of COVID-19. When it got going, the government got very worried about how much spare space there were in our cemeteries, and no one seemed to know. So they put it out on Parish Online, and a lot of parish clerks around the country filled in the data, and it soon became clear that in most places there's plenty of capacity. People who are doing planning applications always need to take these sorts of things into account. So it's very nice to be able to just click a button and up pops the relevant information. There we go with planning applications. If you are in the habit of producing local sort of news letters or history pieces, this is an easy way of producing the map information for them. And these are more of the case studies, and I've just sort of put a note there that says see their website and click on the tab. But basically, they sort them out into the different types. So if you sort of see something here that you think you might be involved with, you can click on it and it will show you how people have done that particular thing. And the beauty of the case studies is that they're step-by-step instructions to explain how on earth this particular council got to where they are. So in this particular one, which happens to be my own village, we had to shut down roads and footpaths and things whilst the cranes and the bulldozers were in action. And this was just showing you how we did it and then published the information for everyone in the village to know. So Parish Online is a geographic information system. It uses standard formats, so it's it's capable of working with all other systems that your higher councils, district councils, and county councils or unitaries are using. So the flow of information in both directions, in theory, is quite straightforward. In practice, I found it very difficult, as I said at the start, to get district councils and county councils to understand what it is that parish councils need their data for. But once they've understood it, they've actually been very helpful. We've yet to find anyone who's prepared to let you say at your end, where you really know what's going on, that the footpath that you've got drawn on the map actually doesn't go where you say it goes here. And because you've got it on Parish Online, you could in theory upload that data to the county council and update their footpath map. But very few of them seem to be able to cater to that. But lots of layers that you can overlay on top of one another to get a better picture, and we'll show you doing that later. And again, you can filter layers. You can say, show me all the, I don't know, trees that are oaks or the ones that are ash, particularly worried about ash dieback or something. And you can filter the layers so that all the data is there. You can just present it as you need it. Clicking on an item brings up the data stored for that item, which is, again, we're back to location-based data, really tremendous stuff. And you have the ability to build all your own layers. So each layer can only contain one type of point of data, the geometry. Either they're going to be points which are useful for things like bus stops, bins, benches, that sort of thing. Lines are brilliant for footpaths and boundaries and so forth. And then everything else is a polygon. If it's a building, if it's a field, an allotment, whatever it is, those are all polygons. And if you have data that's of more than one type, then you have a layer of each, and then you just display both layers together and everything looks like it's all one. So a couple of tips before people get into this. It is a heck of a lot easier to use a mouse. I have tried it with a trackpad because a couple of users were having issues, and I felt that the issues were made it self-evident that you really are much better off with the mouse. Stick with the main browsers. Whatever you do, don't touch Internet Explorer. It's way out of date. It's not supported any longer. And if anyone's still on Internet Explorer, they ought to try something else. For a couple of years now, I've been using Opera, and I just find it's magnificent. It's got a built-in block for ads and that sort of stuff. And it's got some really useful tools to it. So I just mentioned that in passing. Try and use your full screen. And whoops, sorry. And let me go on to the next one. So let's get going on how we actually use it ourselves. So when you first go into Parish Online, it opens up on your own parish. So in my case, I'm in Long Sutton in Somerset. So most of our slides today are going to be revolving around Long Sutton. Sorry about that. And you can zoom in or out, as I imagine most people are used to doing, with the plus and the minus signs up in the top corner here. And then you can scroll left and right just by clicking and moving the mouse, and the whole lot appeals right and left. When you start up, there aren't any layers except the parish boundaries turned on. So you just get the raw map. This column on the left-hand side is showing all the layers at the moment. You'll see as we get going that it does change into a database when appropriate. So it's not always just layers that you see there. The map on the right here is the Ordnance Survey's high definition map, covers the entire country. It's brilliant in the detail. And the next couple of slides are going to show you what you can do with it. So the scaling from the entire country, which is on a 200-kilometer scale, down to millimeters. And I forgot to mention that you can zoom in or out by rolling your mouse wheel for those of you who've got mouse wheels on. So this is the 200-kilometer thing. I'm showing it here just to show you that you can see the whole country. And then to get more data, you just zoom in on any point that you wish. And I'm just going to zoom in on a few of things. So we've come in down to let me just move the photographs again. So this is the 10-kilometer scale. So we're representing 10 kilometers here. I think it's per inch. No, it's not per inch. Well, sorry, it's the distance on the scale there. Yeah. So if we go a bit further, what have I done? There we go. Coming down now to the 500-meter mark. So you're beginning to see more information. You've got village names, house names, the occasional road names, and so forth, all beginning to pop up. You zoom in even further and you get a lot more detail. And then we get really almost down to the absurd. So here's every detail you could possibly want about a particular house. But if you go even more ridiculously type, you're now down to measuring millimeters. So the little line in the bottom left down here represents 200 millimeters. So this is 200 millimeters of a dash line. But you can start seeing individual bricks and things in the houses when you turn the pictures on. So let's talk about layers. Layers on the column of layers to the left are broken down into color coding. And then each layer that you see there is actually a collection of layers underneath. So you click on the little mini arrow to the right here on any one of these things, and you see a whole bunch of stuff. So the base maps really are what's going to determine what appears here. You can use the third-party collections without a base map, but most of the information is meaningless because you just get a series of dots across the screen. So it's useful to have, that's why they're called base maps, because they provide you with the base information that you need. You can have any number of layers switched on that you want to, but of course it's a question of what becomes intelligible. If you have too many layers on it, it doesn't make sense. You toggle your layers on or off just by clicking in any one of these, and then if you go down onto the mini arrows and click on the ones underneath, one click to toggle on, another click to toggle off. I think that's covered everything on that one. So when the system starts up, it defaults to the Ordnance Survey's PSGA model, which is their high definition stuff, and it defaults to the standard one. And that's at the moment the only layer we've got turned on. So what you see here is pure digital map, nothing else. You can select other versions. So I've turned off the standard stack here, and I've clicked on the grayscale. Sometimes help with your printing, particularly if you A, don't have a color printer, or B, you're still using a dot matrix printer or something like that. I can't be sure that anyone is, but you never know. So again, just toggle on or off to get these changes, but the system works really well on the standard, which is the default. What I've done now is turned on two base layers. I've got the standard high definition map that the Ordnance Survey produced, and I brought in the aerial photography for this area. Now, the beauty of the aerial photography is it ties in exactly with the map that you've got. So if I move the map now, the photograph will change as well. And it scales to whatever scale you've got the map set up. Very, very clever. And you'll notice that you're seeing half photography and half map at the moment, and that's controllable. So it's controllable with the transparency of the base map itself. So this is the default setting at about 60%. And you'll notice that in order to bring up this little slider, transparency slider here, I right-clicked in the Ordnance Survey standard layer, and the tick mark changed to a cog to show that I have right-clicked. And now you can just slide this along to get a difference. So if I slide it all the way to the left, I've got 0 map and 100% photograph. And if I go the other way, I get 0 photograph and 0 map. So you get a completely blank screen. I think what I did here was actually I turned off the photographs, and then the Ordnance Survey map decided to pout, and so it didn't show. So when that happens, and it's quite a convenient tip to you, just click on the refresh screen up here and the whole system will come back. Right, so I'm now going to go into some of the beige layers to just show what the point is of overlaying the digital map with new layers of data. And if you know what you're looking for and you know where it is, then you can just jump to it. But it's very helpful to use this little magnifying glass up here, which is a search icon. So I click on there and I type in flood, and it tells me that there are 3 layers which are involved with flooding. I can take my pick. So what I did was click on the Environment Agency here, and it pops up with these underlying layers. And if we go for just say a zone 3 and click on it, then suddenly most of my surrounds disappears underwater. So you can see that climate change and the Somerset levels are quite concerned about what happens when the water in the Bristol Channel comes over the 1 meter high barrier that's protecting us at the moment. So since by 2050, people are expecting the sea level to rise by 1.5 meters. And you can see that it's quite a threat to an awful lot of people here. That's a lot of water. And you know, a couple of years, well, back in 2013, I think was the really bad one. There were cars that just disappeared underwater. So the water was 6 or 7 feet deep. And when you multiply that by the acreage here, that's a huge volume of water. Anyway, when you've finished working with this particular layers, you can click on the X to turn off the search facility, and you just click on the button there to go back to where we were. So we've gone over how we select maps. We've gone over how you add in aerial photography and any third-party layers. We've discussed putting on several layers at once. Now, why would you want to? So this is a particular layer which I've just selected because it's visual and it shows you. But we were given a bunch of trees by the tree charter, and they asked that we keep track of what happens to them. So we gave them to the local farmer, and they put them in this field here, and we sort of marked out the field and says, okay. So you click on the red layer and up pops the data column on the left. So all the columns of layers are now changed, and now you've got the data applicable to this particular area, which has now been outlined in blue to show you it's this area you're talking about and not another one over here if there had been another red area. So the record shows, amongst other things, that there are 5 attachments in this data record. And so if you click on the plus sign, it brings them up. And then if you click on any of the green arrows, it throws up the photograph. So the point being that you've now acquainted everybody who's sort of trying to make a decision on this system with where the issue is, where how the trees looked when they went in, how they're protected at the moment with a stake to hold them up and the little tube to protect the saplings. You can see what I mean about the floods up here. This is all floods water here. And you can put any number of attachments of any type on each record. So if you sort of take a picture every year to see how these trees are going, then you've got an annual survey of how everything is doing. And then when they get large enough, they need to be transplanted and you can track them as they go along. If you are keeping an asset register and you're trying to protect yourself for the insurance companies, then they're much happier if you can demonstrate that you've done regular inspection and repair of your assets. So I suggest here that you can do before and after pictures of maintenance on a park bench that was going rusty, but then it got cleaned up and repainted, or fly tipping before you got in there and got rid of it all, or whatever it happens to be. You're keeping all your record now online in a database where it's secure and available 24/7, and you can output all of this stuff for your insurance company. So that really is just one slide, which is trying to show you how visualization helps people understand. If you're talking in a parish council meeting about how this particular irrigation pipe here was a real menace when it came to putting in the trees, then a picture of it tells 1,000 words. And so we go. So this is where we get you to start participating. And I hope that those of you who are looking forward to this will enjoy it. And those of you who don't want to have any part of this, or you're not able to get into Parish Online at the moment, then please bear with us. Ooh, I don't quite know where that came. I'm sorry, that was a slide that shouldn't have been there. My apologies. So for those of you who are going to participate, you do need to have Parish Online up and running on your computer. You will need to be a user with at least editor access, which I hope everybody is. If you don't have two screens, you'll need to be able to switch from the Zoom screen, which you're looking at and what to do next, with your Parish Online screen where you're actually going to do it. So I suggest that if you've got lots of other tabs open in your browser, it would be a good time now to reduce it to the least number that you need to stay within Zoom and Parish Online. And I just sent an email to everybody yesterday saying, if you're not familiar with Alt-Tab, then it's a really useful way of zipping between two different programs running, but there's no reason not to use your mouse if you're happier with that. And for those funny people with Macs, Alt-Tab is Command-Tab. So I'm going to be assuming that everyone's on a computer as opposed to a mouse, a tablet or a smartphone, and I hope you've got mices to play with. And I'm going to show you on your Zoom screen what would be good to be doing in your Parish Online. If you're having problems, shout, raise your hand or wave, and I may or may not see you. In fact, since most people have got their videos turned off at the moment, I may well not see anything, but do please let me know if you're having issues. So what we're going to do is create a new layer, which must have a title, which we're going to call it, in my case, I just call it test. I call it Graham Test, but you can call it whatever you like. I think there were going to be a couple of people on here from the same place, so I suggested you put your individual name in front just to differentiate the two layers that you may be creating on the same system. Of the choice of geometry, we're going to go for a polygon today. The description we'll get into when we get there, but you can choose your own. I'm not going to dictate what you put in here. And we're going to have 3 columns of data. You need at least one every time you create a record, but you can have as many as you like. We're going to go with 3 today. Those of you who've had a chance to look at your asset register will notice that we're up to 15 or 20 columns in some places, and I know people who go a lot further than that. But the 3 that we type just for today's learning purposes, one will be the name column, which will be a text type, one will be date, which will be amazingly a date type, and then the status column, we're going to put some required values in there just to show you how they work and what they do. So this will be the time for you guys to go into your Parish Online and start going, and the first thing we want to do is to create the new layer. So up in the top row of your menus, you should have a create button, and when you click on it, you should see new layer, and click on that, and we'll come up with the next screen. And I'll just keep an eye out if anyone's stuck. But what it should, clicking on the new layer should bring up this screen for you. And it says enter a title or something in the middle. And I've just added in Graham Test for you. You just sort of swipe it with your mouse and type in whatever you want. And when you're happy, we click on next. And in here, the first thing you want to do is to select the geometry. Now, this is a drop-down little mini arrow here, and you'll see you get three choices of point, line, or polygon, and I've selected polygon. And then you can put a description in here, which is up to 500 characters. And the reason for that is that the title that you put in is what comes up over here on the left-hand side. So there are one or two words, 3 or 4 at the most, is all the space that you're going to get here. And in 6 months' time, or a couple of years, or a change of parish clerk, they may have no idea what Graham Test means, but because I wrote it out in full here, they'll be able to understand. So the point of the description at length here is just to help you sort out what the thing is supposed to do for you, particularly if you don't come back to it for 6 months. So again, when you're happy, click on next. And it comes up with the chance to add columns. So this looks like a blank screen, and you're going to add, in this case, 3 columns, because we need to have 3 types of field in this particular record. And to start each one, you click on this plus sign, the top right. So you click on it once, and you should see this. Now, it automatically calls it name. So each time you click on the plus sign, you'll get another column called name, but it will insist that you can only have one of them with the word name in. You can choose any name, any title, any word, but they have to be unique in each case. And to change name to something else, you just put your mouse up here, delete the word name and put in date or whatever. So we're going to do that with the next one. So we need another one. We're going to add a click again on the plus sign. And again, it automatically calls the new column name, and then there's a little sign saying you've got to have a unique name for the column. So we're going to change that and make it date. Then we're going to change the text field here in the middle from, the type of field from being a text to being a date. You just select that. And then when we're done with that, we click on the plus sign again to call up the third one. And this one we're going to name status. We're going to make it a text field, but we're going to make it an allowed value text field. So what you want to do in this case is to click on Add Plus. And Add Plus comes up and says, okay, so what do you want the values to be? And I've said, let's create one that says not yet started. The second one will be under construction, and the third will be finished. And just once you've typed in your not yet started here for the first one, then click on add here for the second. And when you've done that one, click on add again for the third. And when everything's happy, you've got something that looks like this. Click on confirm. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. So you now should have something that looks roughly like this. You'll notice that the allowed values field has got 3 items in it. That was not yet started, under construction, and finished. And if we're all happy with this, just click on the finish button. And you should come back to the main screen, and it looks apparently as if nothing whatsoever has happened. But if you go into your parish layers button over here, you should see your new layer called test. Now, Parish Online always adds new layers to the bottom of the list. So if you've got a bunch of layers already in there, which I have, you have to scroll down to the bottom of the parish layers to find the new one. But it will be there. And you can click on it. and nothing will happen because we haven't added any data to it, but we want to make a few changes. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we've said one of the columns should be a required field, which in other words, you can't save the record until you put something in there, which solves a problem that we sometimes get when people say, I've entered a record, but now I can't find it. And it turns out that they didn't put any data in there, so there's no way of tracking it. So in order to make one of your columns required, we're going to go up into the administration field, which you get to by clicking on this cogwheel in the top right. You'll get a drop-down menu that says this lot, and you're going to choose administration. And there'll be a period when you see just a screen with nothing but the left-hand side on it. It's because it's busy downloading the central column of your layers from the cloud. If you've only got a few layers, then it's very fast. You may not even notice a delay. And if you have a bunch, as I have, again, it takes a few seconds. But be sure, usually you get a little rotating circle here to show you that it is in fact working. And again, because they always add the new layers to the bottom, you'll have to scroll down to the bottom to find the one you want. And I've clicked on it and then moved up to the top to click on the pencil. So in fact, I'm sorry, I didn't need to click on the pencil, but you need to be able to see these layer details here. Here are, if you click on the columns tab, then you see your 3 columns come up, our name, date, and status column, and the system automatically marks each one of them as OK for search and OK for query. What we want to do today is to make your name column required. It insists that you have data going in there so you can find it in the future. So what you're going to do is just click inside that top required box, and it's going to look like this. So if you're all happy with that, then click on the yellow icon at the top to save it. And it says, you sure? So yes, we're all sure, of course, and you get the chance to save it. I'm not seeing any hands waving, no one lost. So I hope you're able to keep up, or I'm not going too slowly. So I'm clicking on save, and you get a little pop-up yellow label here, which lasts for about 5 seconds. So don't look away if you want to be sure the record has been saved. If there's an error, for some reason it hasn't saved, then it's a red box and it says error. That's usually, in 99% of the cases, a data connectivity issue somewhere between you and the cloud. And usually, again, just clicking on save again resolves the issue. Excuse me, I must just take a sip of Right. So we go back to maps when it's finished saving by clicking on the back to maps icon, excuse me, which is the top right one. So just so you know where we are, we've created a new layer, which I hope you've called something like test, perhaps with your name in front. We've created the 3 desired columns. We've configured the status column to have allowed values. We've configured the name column to take required data. In other words, it will not save until you put something in it. Data is required. And we've come back to the maps. So now we've got a layer created. We want to add some data to it, which is known as add a feature in PowerShell Online parlance. So moving right along to where you should be, you now should be back at the main map section, and you should have, under your PowerShell layers, you should be able to see your new one. Now, in my case, again, the new one has been added to the bottom, so I had to scroll down to find it. I right-clicked on it, up pops a little menu like this, and you click on add feature, because that's the data record we're going to add now. So clicking on add feature brings up this screen, and you'll see that again the left-hand column is now changed to a data record. It tells me I'm in Graham's test layer. It's got all 3 boxes, columns marked, but the name one is red to show that it's required, and it even tells you that. So we can go ahead and add in some data to the record. So I'm just going to do that for you. Well, maybe you didn't. How about that? Oh, I'm sorry. I should read my own writing. So what I said is back here, we're going to add the record now, but it's going to be a building which we're going to stick on our recreation ground. So it helps to zoom in to the right size where you're going to put the data so that you can find it quickly. So I'm now going to zoom in and let's go that way. And here we've got a much bigger picture of the recreation ground, and we're going to stick our new cricket pavilion here. So then I'm going to fill in these fields, which I've done. And you'll notice that the save button is still grayed out because although we've put the data in, we haven't actually said where this is going to be. So your mouse ought to be across hairs now when you move into the map area. And you just go to the starting point where you're going to put your diagram and just click once and then let the button go so that your hand is on the mouse, but no button is pressed. And then whenever you move the mouse, a blue line will follow you. Excuse me. And it'll go in a straight line until you click once again with the left click. And then you can change direction. And then I've just left clicked at every corner and just come up with a shape to make life interesting for us for demonstration purposes. So you can go and create nice round houses, nice square houses, rectangular or anything, or wiggly triangles, whatever you want. I hope you're now creating a button. And once you've got the map, when you've got it complete, double click when you got back to the starting point, and that tells it that you finished. And you'll see that the save button is now fully available. So click on save. And you'll notice that your building now gets highlighted in red to let you know that it's been saved successfully. You get a little pop-up again saying it's been saved. And you'll notice that the left column has changed to another blank record because the assumption is that having entered one feature, you'll then want to go ahead and enter another. So it gives you a blank record to start entering straight away.
Oh.
In our case, we're not going to do that. So we're going to click on the X at the top here and shut down the feature editor. Now, was someone trying to get hold of me, or are they just having their own coughing fit?
I had my hand up, but it's all right. I've caught up with you.
Okay, sorry. All right, let's press on then. So we've now closed the feature editor. We've gone back to our column of data layers, and you'll notice that Graham's test layer is still selected, and our location is now in red, but we now need to make some adjustments. I should have said, when you're doing this diagram in the first place, make it quick and dirty, all right? There's no need to get everything finely placed to begin with, because what we're about to do now shows you a far faster and easier way of doing it. So I'm sorry I'm a bit late in saying this, but do quick and dirty to start with, just to get something in place. And then it's much easier to tidy up things later. So I did a quick and dirty thing. The building isn't aligned where it's meant to be. The corners are not right angles. So we need to change that. So location-based data, we click on our red building and up pops the record. And in order to make any changes to it, we're going to click on the pencil for editing purposes. So you'll notice that the red record has now gone outlined in blue. That shows you're all set to edit that one. And to straighten up the building, it really helps now if you zoom in. In fact, it helps to get to the largest scale practicable, because the mouse tends to move things in little jumps, and the bigger the scale, the smaller the jump, the more precise you can get it. So it's a good idea to, once you've clicked on the pencil, just zoom in, and you'll see that I have zoomed in. And you'll find that if you click anywhere on any of these lines, a blue dot will appear. And once the blue dots appear, you can then move the line to wherever you like. So if I put it in the corner up here, I'll then be able to pull it back to there. And then I go around each of these corners and straightens them out and gets these lines a little bit more in line with each other, which I'll do in the next picture. And you can see now that we're much closer to this field border. Here's one of the blue dots I've left in just to show you what it looks like. And I can now drag that wherever I wish to get the building straightened out. And we'll just pause there whilst I grab another little sip of coffee in case people are still busy straightening their lines. But when you've finished, again, you'll be able to click on save to record, save what you've done. And the system's very good at letting you know if you try and go somewhere else without saving it. It says, you know, do you want to abandon what you've done or do you want to actually save it? All right, moving on and clicking on save. And now we just wanted to show you how you add attachments. Whilst we were in the edit mode with the pencil, you could have changed any of these records here. So if you didn't want to call it the new pavilion, you wanted to call it the new cricket pavilion, you could just click on there and change it to cricket pavilion. You can do any changes at any time very easily in Parish Online. And this is perhaps the time for me to say that it's a very good system for going back and making changes later. So we've created this record with 3 columns. But if you decide later that actually it'd be very nice to have a 4th column to do with what color it's been painted or whether it's got 6 windows or 10, whatever it happens to be, you can just go ahead and add one in later. That's actually the subject of a different meeting, but I mention it because the system is very forgiving of making mistakes or learning as you go along. And I find that you don't have to sit down and plan things out weeks in advance and get every single detail sorted out. You can just go ahead and make changes as you wish later on. So what I've done here is it said we have no attachments. There was a plus sign up here. I've clicked on the plus sign and I'm going to now click on add an attachment. So it then says, so what attachment do you want to add? And you go off in the usual way and find your list of photographs and you can click on one and it'll pop up here. It may take a little while depending on how good your broadband connection is, because pictures can tend to be quite large files. So if it doesn't immediately appear, don't worry, just be patient. It should show up within maybe somewhere between 10 and 30 seconds. But that seems like an awful long time when you're waiting for proof that something is happening. But I've never known this system not work. I have occasionally added the same attachment twice because when it didn't show up when I thought it should have done, I clicked on it again and then I got 2 versions of the same thing. But again, it's a piece of cake. To delete things, you just click on here and then click on the red button and it goes. So we've now added attachments to our new record, or an attachment to our new record. We've created a new record in our new layer. That's the exercise complete. And I hope that it's been useful to anyone who hasn't done this before. For those of you whom this is old hat, my apologies, but bear with me. So moving right along, we've talked about the asset register. It's an interesting beast, the asset register, because you don't have to create anything in the layers for it. The number of columns is predetermined, what the columns are called, what they do is all predetermined for you based on the usage of the system by thousands of people across the country. So basically what you're seeing is the distilled wisdom of what most councils have said they needed and what the insurance companies say that they need. So because everyone everywhere that's using Parish Online is using the asset register, you're not allowed to make changes to the structure of it. So you can add as many records as you wish. You don't have to fill in all the fields by any means. You just do exactly what you need. But the structure, the number of columns and the names of the columns and that sort of thing is not touchable by individual parishes because everyone's using it. And what you may want to change, somebody else may not want to change. So if you find that you are keeping data about your assets, which isn't allowed for in the asset register, then simply add a new layer and just add that one facility that you want to keep on there accordingly. And then whenever you have the asset register turned on, you can turn on that parish layer as well, and everything displays just as if it was all in one layer. This is particularly applicable if we go back to that beginning when you're choosing geometry types. If you've got assets which can cover different geometry types for the same asset name, then you may need to have a spare layer in the parish layer. But everyone gets very used to doing this, and I think most of you can understand that there's something like 1,800 users across the country having parish online, and so you can't keep changing their asset registers. So the asset register you can add data to, but you can't change it. I should have mentioned in passing that the only records that you can make changes to are in the asset register and in your parish layers. So all the third-party layers of information that you get, the flood data from the Environment Agency and the address data from the whoever it is that's doing address space and so forth, is all untouchable by you because it's third-party information, it's their data, we're just displaying it. But the parish layers are entirely for you to do whatever you want with, and the asset register is sort of the distilled wisdom, if you will, of what it is that most councils need to record about their assets. So I keep being asked whether what you've put in your parish layers or your asset registers are visible to anybody else, and the answer is no. The only people who can see it are people who are authorized to log in to your version of Parish Online. There are a couple of layers, and I expect those to increase in number, particularly as climate change becomes more and more widespread a problem. But at the moment, just cemeteries and allotments, the data that you put in there is visible outside your parish because they're data that is being assimilated upwards for use by more senior government levels. So, I mean, the cemeteries one, it was an example I gave you earlier, that if the government needs to know whether there are 5,000 spare graves or plots for graves in the southwest, then they've got to be able to see all of the data from all of the parish councils using Parish Online. So there are two national layers at the moment, cemeteries and allotments, and on the allotments one, it's only the boundaries that do the outside details of the allotments that are visible. The individual plots where you might be storing information like how much you charge for them and who it is and whether they're a good tenant or not, none of that is available outside your parish. So I hope that's helped. All right, next slide. On the original agenda, I said that we would cover menu headings. We've actually got a page on the user group website that shows the main screen from Parish Online, the one that you're all familiar with. And each time you click on any one of the menu items, the menu headings, it explains what it does, how they work, and that sort of thing. So that's really designed for people who've never seen Parish Online before and have no idea how it works. So this is aimed at brand new users only. For everything else, the knowledge base, particularly now they just completely revamped it, I find is extremely thorough. They've built in all the videos nowadays so that you can see in the knowledge base videos, or you can, if you're a reading person, then you can just go down through the step by steps. And on the user group website, there is also a list of every video that exists, as far as I know, about Parish Online, and it lists how long they are. So if you've only got a minute spare, then obviously you want to choose a video that's only a minute long. But if you've got the next 40 minutes, you don't know what you're going to do, you can find a 40-minute video and go through something step by step by step. So they're all there in the user group website, or the knowledge base, of course, is built into Parish Online. So I think we've got to the end with at least 3.5 minutes to spare for those people who are tight on time. I'm not, so if anyone has questions or they want to do anything face to face, now is the time. So I'm wide open to questions. If anyone has any, please. It looks as
Hi, Graham. I don't know whether my
Oh, sorry, no, it's Becky. Beg your pardon.
Sorry, it is Becky. Sorry, I didn't know whether my microphone was working. Thank you, Graham. That was really useful, and it's good doing it in real time as well. I find that really helpful. Just a couple of questions. When you've done a polygon, is there any way that you can move the whole polygon, kit and caboodle? And similarly, can you copy that polygon rather than having to redraw it from scratch on the same layer?
The answer to that is yes. But you can hear I'm a sort of a bit, what's the word? Very modifying my answer. So yes, one can, and the best way of copying things, or the most frequently asked things for copies, can you copy the data from one layer to another? And the answer to that is that the system will copy the shapes and the outlines, but it won't copy the underlying data. So if you've got a whole bunch of things in one layer and you decide you need it in another one, you can certainly copy them to another layer, but the data will have to be put back in individually for each item. The business of, I think maybe I can just show you, unless there's any other urgent questions. Let me, before I get into this, because it takes a little time, does anyone have anything shorter that they want to answer? Tamsin's had to run away. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen again. Go back into Parish Online, which is, there you go, let's read that one, I think. So I'm going to go into Parish Online. And let's come out of here. So let's say that we want to repeat this. There isn't a way of taking the shape and just saying, do 10 more of this. What there is able to do up here, if I'm going to click on these dots, is you can copy to another layer, which is what I mentioned. And if you add a new record, sorry, I didn't mean to go there. So if we want to go add a new feature, you get these little icons across the top here, which if you want rectangles and you know what size they are, so this is a sort of approximately a rectangle, you can take a lot of the work out by saying, I want the size to be either these sizes. You can scroll down and find something that really works for you. Or you can say, can't remember what that, and there's an undo button, which is really, really helpful. And there's a sort of a snap system too, that if you create a whole bunch of things the same size, you can snap them all to each other. So that's why I was very wary about how I answered you, that there is no immediate duplication facility, but you can get multiple versions of things like football pitches or tennis courts or anything that's the same size like this, and just snap them down, then you can move them into place. And I think your question was also, can you move this particular one? So come away from here, from the feature editor, click on this one, and click, there we go. And I say, I want to edit it. Then if you find that I've run it on the wrong side of the road, I can say, why don't I move this one to there, this one to there, and take this one to there. You can approximate that way. So it's not really the same as, we're going to go there, and we're going to go there, and we're going to go there. I'm going to go there. So I've moved it. I mean, I know what you were asking. Can you just pick the whole thing up and slide it along, which would be really nice. You can, if it's a dot, I'm not sure if you can. I can't remember if you can with a line, but certainly if it's a dot, you can just pick it up and slide it to wherever you want. So if you're doing grit bins or salt bins or waste paper baskets or something like that, or park benches, you just pick them up and move them. But but if you've got a rectangle or a polygon of any sort, then you can't just pick it up, but you can move it quite quickly by sliding things over. I mean, it's very approximate, but this is the idea I'm showing you, how quick it is to easy things. If you wanted to say, I really need it to be very close to this boundary that you've been so cavalier about, I can go into it and say, well, it really is pretty close to that boundary. But here, you might say, if you want to be precise, we could put it there. And if we want to be a bit more precise, we could put it there. And that's what I meant about changing the scale and getting it to the best place. And Alistair, you had a question.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, how do I get, I've started out without reading the instructions, which is the usual thing with me. I've got some layers which I don't want, or I want to take things out of. How do I get rid of a layer or the detail on the layer so I can put them in the proper layer?
All right, I think there are several answers to that question. If you want to get rid of individual details inside a layer, so let's just say that particular rectangle that I've just created, I've selected it, so I can just click on it and delete it. So, and it's gone, all right? So all that work, that red square that we did is now gone. If, on the other hand, you decide the entire layer is no longer necessary, come up here into your cogwheel and go into administration, and then I need to move the pictures. Wait for the layers to show up. And my test layer here, I've now selected it and I delete it, and then the whole layer is gone.
That's great. Thank you very much.
And to be sure that you want to delete it, you actually got to type in the capital letters delete, which I'm not going to do in case I need this for tomorrow. But you can see the point. Anybody else, please? Oh, sorry, you've got a corner up here, Christine.
Sorry, that was the same question. You've already answered it for me.
Good. Well, I'm really grateful for your time. I'm overwhelmed by all the wonderful ideas you've sent, you've told me about that you want to see in future training sessions, but now's your chance. If you have something that you'd really like to have a training session on, I'd really love to know about it. So please do feel free. If you're shy, you can put it in the chat.
Can I just ask a brief question about your planning applications that I can see on your list?
Yeah.
Is that a record you've created of all planning applications?
Yes. So if we go back to the main layers.
Sorry, this is me being nosy, seeing your list and thinking that's useful.
Do you know about public maps? Have you come across those yet? I have a thing about boundaries. Let me just turn these boundaries off. They really irritate me.
Yeah.
So if you go into my layers, planning applications are probably the biggest thing that we work on. So I've got a layer for every year for the last 4 years. And if I turn on the layer, you can see, we probably need to zoom in a little bit. And these are all color coded. So if they're purple, they haven't been approved yet. And if they're a different color than they have been, it's probably easier to see if we go to last year, where there was a lot more happening. And you can see, look at this up here. It's getting very busy. And as you scale in, you can start seeing things. And it's the same old thing. If you want to know about any particular one, you just click on it and the record pops up. And because it's green, you know that this one was approved. With conditions in this case, only at the end of last month. And I put in the link to the portal from the local district council that brings up all the data for that particular record. So I just clicked on the link and it takes me straight to South Somerset. And here is that particular house. And here are all the associated documents to go with it.
And you can add in links in the same way as you can add in any other information. Is there an add link bit, or do you just type it in?
There is an add link bit, but it's actually very straightforward. If we go back to the business of changing the columns, so let me go back into the map here, go up into administration, choose a layer, just wait patiently. So we'll take my layer and say one of the fields is going to be a link. So go into columns here, and you have a link column here.
Oh,
And we'll
great.
say, and you have to click on the link for the whichever field you want to make a link. And then really crucial, you need to click on these 3 little horizontal dots here, and up comes some choices. And in 999 times out of 1,000, you want to go with the default. So just press confirm.
Right.
To explain what the other values are here is an entire hour's session, because they're quite
well,
complicated.
I just need the default. I'm quite happy.
Yes, right. So clicking on in here and then clicking on the dots. The dots is crucial. You have to click on them. It's not blindingly obvious that you have to, but you do. And then you can just save up here and you're done.
And
That field will now be
applications would be the most appropriate because they can check the status.
I'm sorry, I talked over you then, so I didn't hear what you said.
That's okay. I was just saying for planning applications, the most sensible location to have the link would be in status.
Yes and no. So if I go into our planning applications, then let me just go into any one record so that you can see it. So we'll just choose one up here. So I've made a column called the link to the South Somerset District Council page, and that's where I put the link. And the status field is
yes, okay, I see.
When
So
you get the email in
section
from the District Council saying this has been approved, and you can just chuck in here and change it. And there's a whole business called styling, which you can say, I want the color to change whenever the status changes. That's called styling, and that again is another hour-long session, or there's quite a good video about it, or there's a very good article in the knowledge base about it. But that's all readily available.
It's just, I think that planning bit will be especially useful for me.
Yes, what you really want to do is to get on to, are you in a unitary or are you in a district council?
Mendip District.
Oh, Mendip, oh, right. Well, all I can say
Don't
there is
laugh like that.
Well, we're working very hard on getting Mendip to export their planning applications directly to us so that you don't have to do any of this stuff. It's all automatic. That's one of the biggest things that we want district councils to do. And I think the first one that will do it happens to be South Somerset, because they've actually bought XMAT, which is the big brother to Parish Online. But Malcolm Daniels, who's the Stratton-on-the-Foss GIS guy, is working very hard with Mendip District Council, trying to get them to export their planning applications. But it's very tricky. One thing that we do like about Mendip is that when you go into their planning portal in iStatus, and they will show you the history of all the planning applications that have gone in for that particular building.
Yes.
I think is really, really helpful. And I've not found anyone else who's done that yet. But I think it's a great, great advantage. To see that this particular house has been changed 15 times in the last 10 years is good to know about. Which seems to be true of Downside, for instance. Did I answer your question? Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? I'm very happy to go on answering questions or letting people say what they have a problem with, and we can share screens. Don't let me tempt you all at once. Georgia, has this been useful for you?
Yeah, it has, thank you. Yeah.
Good, good. Well, no one has yet given me any ideas. You sure you don't want to say, if only we could have a training session on such and such? That would be really helpful to me, because I don't know what to come up with next. Just need feedback from people on what is the most tricky thing to grasp, or the one that's really bothering people. Right,
I think the thing I get most confused about is how to do consultations and surveys. I would find that very interesting, but also a bit more information as to how to do this planning thing, I think would be also useful.
Okay. Well, I can rerun that. We actually did one a couple of months ago, but I'm very
Sorry, I
happy
missed
to
that.
do it again. And that does remind me that a really helpful thing I would suggest for everybody is that if you happen to be available at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you should come to one of our free banter sessions, which you can find in the Parish Online website. But basically, it's a group of the usual suspects who get together and they're just sitting waiting for anyone to call in with a question in Parish Online. And it can be any question from the absolutely daft to the complete, I want to do a complete neighborhood plan in the next 10 minutes, please. How can I do that? And they will snort with derision and then go on and help you. But it's a very friendly bunch of people. They're there to help. They're very cooperative. They're very light-hearted, which is why it's called a banter session, because when we don't actually have any questions being asked, we're busy exchanging information with each other usually about parish council matters. Can occasionally get up to what on earth is wrong with Manchester United, but you know. So 3 o'clock on Friday afternoons, it's open to everyone to drop in. You can drop in for 3 seconds, have your question answered and drop out again. No one minds, we're just looking to be helpful. So if you have an issue, by all means, just come along and see if you can get it answered immediately.
Graham, it's Ali here. I'd be interested in more training around the neighbourhood planning thing, sort of like ways to use it for neighbourhood planning. We're shortly to be reviewing our neighbourhood development plan.
Okay, well, I can certainly help you there. I can also I'd gladly send you the most recently completed neighbourhood plan I'm familiar with, which was actually a very good one. And it shows you everything that was done in Parish Online. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be really helpful, because I think it's being sort of like somewhat unfamiliar with Parish Online. It's just sort of like getting your head around how it can be used, you know, in that particular circumstance. So that would be great. Thank you.
Well, as it happens, Ali, the person who did this neighbourhood plan is one of the usual suspects on Friday afternoons. So
okay.
Another good reason for you to drop in at 3 o'clock on a Friday, but it's not at 3 o'clock, it's between 3 and 4. And you can just drop in at any time and say, how on earth did you do that in your neighbourhood plan? And so I'll send it to you, and then you'll be ready to come in armed with all sorts of antagonistic questions.
No, just curious questions, hopefully.
Oh, well, you know, the banter group is ready for anything.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for your help. It's been really interesting training.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming, Ali.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone else have anything else? We can sit here until the cows come home if it's helpful, but who knows? I hope it's been helpful. Please do communicate with me if you need anything. I will be sending out the video and the presentation to everyone. If you think of something where you like training, then please just email me back. Thank you all so much for your time. It's been great to talk with you. Great to meet some of you for the first time. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Really useful. Bye.
Bye.